Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to Flock of Wisdom. This is Clara again. I hope that you all had a very Merry Christmas, and I pray that you all have a very blessed New Year. And today I wanted to come on and talk about touching Jesus. 2025 is almost come to a close, and we're coming into 2026, and I just wonder how many of us are going in and walking into 2026 with issues, with unresolved issues that we've had, all because we have not touched Jesus. I'm going to start out today, and I'm going to be reading in the book of Mark, and I'm going to start and be in chapter 5, and I'm going to start with verse 25 and read on to verse 36. And it won't take long before you know where we're going with this. But Mark 5, verse 25 says, "And a certain woman, which had an issue of blood 12 years, had suffered many things of many physicians, and had spent all that she had, and was nothing bettered, but rather grew worse. When she had heard of Jesus, came in the press behind, and touched his garment. For she said, If I may touch but his clothes, I shall be whole. And straightway the fountain of her blood was dried up, and she felt in her body that she was healed of that plague. And Jesus, immediately knowing in himself that virtue had gone out of him, turned him about in the press, and said, Who touched my clothes? And his disciples said unto him, Thou seest the multitude thronging thee, and sayest thou, Who touched me? And he looked around about to see her that had done this thing. But the woman, fearing and trembling, knowing what was done in her, came and fell down before him, and told him all the truth. And he said unto her, Daughter, thy faith hath made thee whole. Go in peace, and be whole of thy plague. While he yet spake, there came from the ruler of the synagogue's house certain which said, Thy daughter is dead. Why troublest thou the master any further? And as soon as Jesus heard the word that was spoken, he saith unto the ruler of the synagogue, Be not afraid, only believe. And I went a little further with that because I know it went into speaking about the ruler's daughter. But in verse 26, he says, Be not afraid, only believe. This woman, who is not even mentioned by name, but rather referred to as a certain woman, told herself if she could just touch his clothes, she would be made whole. Let's read verse 28 again. It says, For she said, If I may touch but his clothes, I shall be whole. She didn't doubt for a second that once she touched him, she would be made whole. She said clearly, I shall be made whole. Not, I might be. There's a possibility that I could be made whole. You know, maybe. I don't know. She said, I shall be made whole. That shall be made whole is without a doubt. If I touch him, I'm going to be made whole. This woman had suffered with an issue of blood for 12 long years. Not only did she physically suffer from the issue itself, but it says she suffered many things of many physicians, and she spent all she had to only grow worse and not anything better. According to Mosaic law, women who were ceremonially unclean were separated for worship in God's temple. This woman could not even go to the temple to pray or to be prayed for. No one could lay their hands upon her, and you know, she couldn't be prayed for. And any person or thing they touched was made unclean. Anything or anybody that she touched or they touched her, they were made unclean as well. There were several things that made you be considered unclean And some examples that made you unclean were leprosy, unusual bodily discharges related to reproduction, such as semen, a woman's menstrual cycle, touching a corpse, and so on. So she would have been considered unclean and not allowed to touch anyone, especially the Son of God. But she was in desperation, and we all heard the expression, desperate times call for desperate measures. For 12 miserable years, blood flowed from this woman's body and caused her to be very sick and socially unacceptable. She couldn't go to friends. She couldn't go to church. She was alone, suffering alone for 12 long years. The physicians were unable to relieve her suffering. She spent everything that she had, yet instead of getting better, she only got worse. Some of us have already been there, and some of us are where this woman is today. Some of us are dealing with prolonged illness and stubborn medical conditions. It's frustrating to keep going to the doctor or doctors only to return home with new prescriptions and very little hope. After a while, your faith starts to weaken, and you can really start to doubt. And with a weakened faith and doubt comes unbelief. You start to doubt that you're ever going to be any better, and you believe that you never will, so you remain in the sickness that you have. In this woman's story, there was a part of her that remained healthy, and that was her faith. She had a willingness within herself to believe she could be well again, despite all the evidence against her that pointed to the contrary. She had no reason to believe that she was going to be any better. She spent all her money. She went to many doctors. She suffered many different things. And when it says she suffered many different things by these many doctors, I believe, there's many different things that they tried, many tests, many procedures, and nothing worked. She had no reason to believe, physically that she was going to be any better. But she had that spiritual faith to believe for her healing. When she heard of Jesus, a man who had healed many of various diseases, she pressed in and made her way to him through the crowd and touched his garment. And immediately her bleeding stopped. Without a word, a look, or a touch from Jesus, she was made whole by simply believing he would heal her and acting out upon that belief that she had. So many times we beg Jesus to help us. We throw ourselves at him and we wait for him to touch us rather than touching him through her faith. When her faith was rewarded, everyone in the crowd had noticed. Jesus didn't see her. He didn't have to go and touch her or even look at her. He immediately knew that someone had been healed because he felt the virtue go out of him. Virtue is simply power. Virtue brings divine healing. It's a miraculous force. Jesus perceived this power had gone out of him. In response to this woman's touch, this woman's faith activated this virtue. Jesus called out to find the person who touched him so the woman could receive full healing, and so her faith could be acknowledged publicly, preventing any superstition. The same faith that empowered her to stretch out her hand now gave her the strength to step forward. She fell at his feet, trembling with fear, and told him the whole truth. She risked everything, public humiliation, to make her confession of faith, explaining to him, with the crowd watching and listening, to the reason that she had touched him. With a single word from Jesus, 12 years of pain and isolation were swept away. She went from being referred to as a certain woman to being referred to by Jesus as daughter in verse 34. She had set an example for others, including myself and you, that we can be healed by touching Jesus. In just the next chapter over in Mark chapter 6 verse 56, it says, "And whithersoever he entered into villages or cities or country, they laid the sick in the streets and besought him that they might touch, if it were but the border of his garment. And as many as touched him were made whole." Everyone. There was none that was left out. Everyone that had touched him was made whole. In order for us to touch Jesus, we must truly believe that he's going to do what we ask when we reach out to him. John 20:27 says, "Then he saith to Thomas, Reach hither thy finger, and behold my hands, and reach hither thy hand, and thrust it into my side, and be not faithless, but believing." Mark 11:24 says, "Therefore I say unto you, what things soever ye desire when you pray, believe that ye receive them, and ye," here's that word again, and ye shall have them. John 20:29 says, "Jesus saith unto them, Thomas, because thou hast seen me, thou hast believed. Blessed are they that have not seen and yet have believed." These are people that believe before they see. I wonder how many of us have missed out on our healing. You know, I'm not even going to say missed out, because we still have a chance. If we still have breath, we still have a chance to be healed, to receive our healing. But many of us have delayed our healing because, we'll use the word delayed, we have delayed our healing because we lack the faith to believe in our miracle. We let our symptoms and the diagnosis of the doctors convince us that this is just the way it is and the way it's always going to be. Like this woman, we've been to doctors. We've gotten new prescriptions. We've probably gotten new symptoms from the side effects of these prescriptions, and only have grown worse. I wonder how many of us has let the crowd hold us back. We don't want people to look at us or to know our condition. Many of us just haven't gotten desperate enough to press through regardless of who or what is around us. We wait for someone else to step out first. We let pride hinder us from reaching out and touching Jesus. My pastor often tells a story, and he's told it many times, about an evangelist named Brother Mullins, who tells a story about a bashful man who never prayed in public, but the man wanted the Holy Ghost. They had called a prayer line, and this man had went to the pastor and told him what he wanted. And the preacher had told him to go to an air conditioner and scream, "Ye old air conditioner," and he would receive the Holy Ghost. Well, the man thought, I'm not going to do this, because imagine it. You've just been told to go scream in an air conditioner. Well, instead of doing what the preacher said, the man got mad at the preacher and went back to his seat. Weeks went by, and again he was in a service, and the Spirit of God was moving. And this man had wore a mason ring, and he sat there twirling this mason ring. And as he sat there spinning his ring, he finally got the courage, and he threw the ring off. And he walked up to that air conditioner unit, and he screamed, "Ye old air conditioner." And immediately the Spirit of God fell upon him right then and there. He got desperate enough to step out in faith to do whatever it took to get what he was after. Sometimes, the things that seem foolish to us, it's not foolish to God. Sometimes it takes doing things, stepping out of our will and doing things that seem crazy, things that we don't want to do, and we don't want to bring attention to ourselves, that gets God's attention. Matthew 19:26. It's speaking of being saved. It says, "But Jesus beheld them and said unto them, with man this is impossible, but with God all things are possible." Things that seem impossible to us, things that are impossible for the doctors, things that seem foolish are not. These are things with God that nothing is impossible with God. There is nothing that God cannot do. There's absolutely nothing. He created us. He created the heavens, the earth, and everything that's in them. And He's able to fix everything that He created. He knows it. Luke 1:37 says, "For with God nothing shall be impossible." Genesis 18:14 says, "Is anything too hard for the Lord?" Jeremiah 32:17 says, "Ah, Lord God, behold, thou hast made the heaven and the earth by thy great power and stretched out arm, and there is nothing too hard for thee." Isaiah 46:11 says, "I have spoken it, I will also bring it to pass. I have purposed it, I will also do it." Job 42:2 says, "I know that thou canst do everything, and that no thought can be withholden from thee." Matthew 17:20 says, "And Jesus said unto them, Because of your unbelief, for verily I say unto you, if ye have faith as a grain of mustard seed, ye shall say unto this mountain, Remove hence to yonder place, and it shall remove, and nothing," get that, "nothing shall be impossible unto you." Mark 10:27, "And Jesus looking upon them saith, With men it is impossible, but not with God. For with God all things are possible." We need to not only read the word, but we need to apply these words and put everything that Jesus is telling us into action. James 1:22 says, "But be ye doers of the word and not hearers only, deceiving your own selves." Nothing is impossible with God, but we deceive ourselves by believing these reports of the doctor, believing our symptoms. We are deceiving ourselves because we read, if we apply God's word and what He says, that nothing is impossible, but with God all things are possible. He didn't say, "I might do it. Maybe if you come, I might." But He says, "I shall do it. I will do it." But He says, if it doesn't happen, it's because you don't believe it will. It's because of your unbelief. It's because you're not willing to step out of your comfort zone and to, when the Spirit of God is moving, we're not willing for people to look at us. We just want to sit right there and see what He does for somebody else and wonder why we don't receive. because we're sitting there. We're not willing to step out in faith and not care what everyone else says. We're not willing to get up and do what it takes to be healed because of our unbelief. He says if it don't happen, it's because of your unbelief. For verily I say unto you, if you have faith as a grain of mustard seed, ye shall say unto this mountain, remove hence to yonder place, and it shall remove, and nothing shall be impossible unto you. James 2:14 says, what doth it profit, my brethren, though a man say he hath faith and have not works? Can faith alone save him? No. It's going to take the work. It's going to take some action upon on our part to make this work. James 2:17 says, even so faith, if it hath not works, is dead, being alone. Faith is not going to work without action. It's not going to work alone. It's going to take action. It's going to take us putting our faith into action, doing things, stepping out of our comfort zone, and believing to make this work. Setting on our faith is not going to produce any results. Watching other people or waiting on other people to step out is not going to produce works. It's not going to bring our healing by just sitting and waiting. If that woman in the Bible with the issue of blood had sat there, and just because she believed, just because she had faith and she believed that, Jesus would heal her, it would have never happened without her going through that crowd, pressing through that crowd that, she went through a crowd regardless, of the consequences that she faced. Knowing that she, was not supposed to touch these people. But she pressed through this crowd regardless of what anybody thought, regardless of the consequences. She made her way and she pressed on and did whatever needed to be to get to Jesus. This woman had faith to believe that she could touch his clothes and that she could be made whole. But she had to put her faith into action in order to receive. How many of us go to church week after week, service after service, and we sit there? I'm guilty, y'all. I am so guilty of this. How many times have we been sitting there and we had that little unction to go, and do something where we thought, no, I'm going to look stupid. Maybe God told you to get up and run around the church, but you said, no, the preacher's preaching. These people are going to think I'm stupid, I'm just going to look foolish to do this. How many times have we sat there and missed our opportunity of what God was wanting to do within us because of what others was going to think about us? Or because we didn't believe, okay, how many times have we went and prayed and nothing happened, because we truly didn't believe, that it was going to happen. We thought maybe. We had the maybe attitude. I have a lot of the maybe attitude within me, but it takes the he will, he shall, but we walk up there with doubt. Maybe the people praying for us, has the doubt. If we read on, in the book of Mark, it says, in verse 35, it says, while he yet spake, there came from the ruler of the synagogue's house certain which said, thy daughter is dead, why troublest thou the master any further? Now, if you go ahead and if you read the whole chapter 5, you'll know that there was a little girl who was at the age of 12, that they had besought Jesus that he would go and touch this girl. But at the same time, this woman had the issue of blood for 12 years, had reached Jesus first, and had stopped Jesus, so Jesus, she had touched Jesus and had stopped Jesus for a minute, and the girl had died, or so they thought had died. And so there came in all that, doubt. She's dead. Why trouble him any further? She's already gone. It's too late. How many we have that too late? It's too late. When we see the symptoms, we look at the problem. It's too late. Why trouble him any further? It's too far, and maybe there's people that, that's praying for us, that says, hey, it's too late. They're walking up, they're praying, they're doubting. Maybe we've prayed for people and we ain't seen nothing because we walked up or praying, doubting. Hey, we see their issues. We see it. It's too late. It's too late. How many times do we walk over there with that? But it says in 36, as soon as Jesus heard the word that was spoken, he saith unto the ruler of the synagogue, be not afraid. Only believe. There's that word again, believe. And it says in 37, he suffered no man to follow him, save Peter and James and John, the brother of James. And he cometh to the house of the ruler of the synagogue, and seeth the turmoil, and them that wept and wailed greatly. And when he was come in, he saith unto them, why make ye this ado and weep? The damsel is not dead, but sleepeth. And they laughed him to scorn, because they didn't believe. They had that unbelief. But when he put them all out, if you don't believe, then just go on. I don't need it. Because your unbelief is not going to make this happen. I don't need your unbelief in here. And they laughed him to scorn, but when he put them all out, he taketh the father and the mother of the damsel and them that were with him, and entered in when the damsel was lying. And he took the damsel by the hand and said unto her, Talitha cumi, which is being interpreted, damsel, I say unto thee, arise. And straightway the damsel arose and walked, for she was of the age of 12 years, and they were astonished with a great astonishment. And he charged them straitly that no man should know it, and commanded that something should be given her to eat. But those unbelieving and those that were laughing and doubting, he said, you can't enter in. Though if you walk up to someone, and if you're doubting and you're lacking the faith to believe that, that God is able to do whatever is needed, then you need to just stay on your seat. Because it takes faith and belief that what you're praying for, that he's going to do. So many of us pray for others and we walk up there not truly believing, but with doubt. And so many people walk out and go back and sit on their seats or go back home in the same way they came, because of doubt, because of unbelief. But if we have faith to believe, nothing shall be impossible. So my word, that's my word today. Let's not go into 2026 with doubt and unbelief. But let us put our faith into action. And let it, I pray, we have revival coming up in 2026. We're starting out the new year in revival. I don't want to go into this revival with doubt, with unbelief. I need things done in my body. You need things done. There's going to be many people there that needs healing. I don't know of many people. I mean, there are some people that are very healthy, but I don't know of anybody that don't need something from God. And I don't want to go to this revival and not receive my healing because of my pride or because I'm worried about what others think. I don't want to miss out this time. There's so many times that I've sat there on that bench and I've watched and I've waited for somebody else to step up first. Okay, God, if somebody else would just take off running, if somebody else would step out, if somebody else would walk to the front, then I'll go. I'll go if somebody else goes first. That woman, she didn't wait. She didn't let anything hinder her. She didn't let her issue. She didn't let the consequences of her stepping out hinder her from doing. The man that, my preacher talks about, he finally got desperate enough and he gained the courage to step out in faith and do what that preacher told him to do, even though it looked foolish, and scream at an air conditioner and say, "Ye old air conditioner," and allow God to fill him right then and there by doing things that seem foolish to us. I don't want to go to this revival that way. I don't want to enter into 2026 with doubt and unbelief that I've carried with me for years. I know God is speaking to me. And if, I want to share this message. I know there's many that's sick today. There's, many that's been through so many things and carried it and it's just let doubt set in and our faith has grew weak because of our unbelief. Because we don't truly believe that God's going to do it. We go in with a maybe attitude and we need to go in with He is, He will. We need to go in with the He will attitude. This is my word today, We had Brother Mark preach for us last night. And he preached on, to start off with, his wife, Sister Terry, had sung a song. And she started off, before he started preaching, she started off with the song, Touching Jesus. And I know that we have heard that song and it's been sung in our services a whole lot lately, Touching Jesus. And it says the only way to touch Him is to believe when you call upon His name. And I was sitting there thinking, that's what we need. We need to believe. We need to touch Jesus. We need to believe when we call upon His name that He's going to do those things. And Brother Mark preached on, I can't remember the exact title, but we might be in the valley right now. And how we need to change our perspective in the way that we think. The way we look at things when we're in the valley, we can just see ourselves being in valley after valley. And, but we need to look at it as not being in that valley, but being in between two mountains. We might be walking through the valley, but we're headed to the mountaintop. If we could just believe that. This is my word for you today. I pray that your faith grows. I pray that this has encouraged you in some way to step out, and to do the things, whatever is hindering you from getting your healing, from touching Jesus. I pray that this has encouraged you to step out boldly and put your faith into action, regardless of what anybody thinks. The only person that matters is Jesus. That's what He thinks is the only thing that matters. What others thinks does not matter. What looks foolish, to us does not matter. Only what Jesus thinks matters. I pray this has helped you in some way today. I pray that we all can step into 2026 boldly and courageously and step out in faith and put our faith into action. I pray you all have a blessed new year. Not just the beginning, but all the way through. So this is my word today. I know I'm rambling on now. There's just, I just really pray for all of us. Myself, I struggle with this badly. I struggle with believing that He's going to do it. I go in with that maybe attitude. And I don't want to be that way no more. I want to step out in faith And I want to see miracles happen. I want to see things happen in this revival. If you're watching this and you don't go to Bible Way, this is your invitation. We're going to be having revival January 6th through the 11th. That will be Tuesday through Sunday. Tuesday through Saturday, it will be at 6:30. And on Sunday, we'll have the Sunday morning service starting at 10 and then at 6 Sunday night. But this is your invitation. Don't miss out. Maybe this revival is what, you need to step into. Don't miss out. Come, join us. Come expecting and believing. And don't let anything hinder you from coming or stop you. I believe, that God is going to do a work in here. If we could only believe, if we could only step out. So, come, be a part of it. I'm looking for great things. I'm expecting miracles to happen in the service. I'm expecting God to do things. And I pray that you would all come, and I pray that this has touched you in some way. And I just want to encourage you to just step out in faith and stop allowing the devil and the doubts to hinder what God is wanting to do. May you all be blessed, and God bless you all. And until next week, Lord willing, I'll see you then.